The Last Guardian. Ranger Zara Kestrel's boots crunched through the crystalline snow of Helios 7, each step echoing across the vast emptiness of the alien world. The twin moons cast their purple glow across the frozen landscape, creating shadows that danced between the towering bioluminescent crystal formations. She was the last human on this research outpost, choosing to stay behind when the others evacuated 6 months ago. Someone had to protect the delicate ecosystem they discovered here. Her environment suit's sensors chirped, detecting unusual energy signatures from the valley ahead. Zara adjusted her scanner, frowning at the readings. The native crystal formations typically emitted a steady, predictable frequency, but these pulses were erratic, almost like distress signals. "Base, this is Kestrel," she spoke into her comm unit, knowing no one would answer. The automated systems would record her logs, at least. Investigating anomalous readings in Sector 7. Could be another crystal bloom, but pattern suggests otherwise. The valley opened before her like a wound in the planet's surface, its edges lined with pulsing crystals that seemed to respond to her presence. As she descended, her suit's thermal imaging revealed something she'd never seen before. A heat signature, small but distinct, huddled against one of the larger crystal formations. Zara approached cautiously, her hand resting on her pulse rifle. 6 months alone had taught her that Helios 7's beauty hid countless dangers. The heat signature moved, and she caught her first glimpse of what would change everything. A child, but not human. The creature was about the size of a 10-year-old human, its skin a translucent blue that seemed to mirror the crystals around it. Delicate tendrils that might have been hair or sensory organs floated around its head like underwater plants. It was injured, dark fluid seeping from what appeared to be a wound in its side. "Hello," Zara said softly, activating her suit's universal translator. "I'm here to help." The child's eyes opened, 3 of them, arranged in a triangle pattern, and focused on her with an intelligence that made her breath catch. It spoke, a series of musical tones that her translator struggled to process. "Danger, coming," the translator finally managed. "Hide. Must hide." Zara's scanner suddenly screamed with alerts. Something massive was entering the atmosphere, something that hadn't appeared on any of her long-range scans. The child tried to stand but collapsed, its wound clearly worse than it appeared. In that moment, Zara made a decision that would alter the fate of 2 species. She deactivated her rifle and knelt beside the injured alien child. "I'm getting you out of here. Can you understand me?" The child reached out with a 6-fingered hand and touched her visor, leaving a pattern of bioluminescent traces that seemed to pulse in sync with its own light. The translator crackled. "Yes. Thex. My name is Thex." Zara scooped Thex into her arms, noting how light the child was, almost as if its bones were hollow. The ground trembled as whatever had entered the atmosphere drew closer. "Hold on, Thex. My research base isn't far. We'll be safe there." As they moved through the crystal forest, Thex's bioluminescence seemed to interact with the formations around them, creating patterns that guided their way. Zara realized the child wasn't just similar to the crystals. There was some kind of symbiotic relationship at play. They reached the research base just as the first sonic booms shook the valley. Through the reinforced windows, Zara watched as 3 massive ships, their hulls covered in what looked like living metal, descended through the clouds. Their design was completely alien, neither human, nor sharing any characteristics with Thex's bioluminescent biology. "They found me," Thex whispered, the translator catching the fear in those musical tones. "The harvesters. They take everything." Zara sealed the base's blast doors and carried Thex to the medical bay. As she treated the wound with their limited supplies, she noticed patterns in Thex's bioluminescent markings that matched the ancient glyphs her team had discovered carved into the planet's crystal formations months ago. "You're connected to this place, aren't you?" she asked, applying a regenerative patch to the wound. "To the crystals, to the entire ecosystem we've been studying." Thex's 3 eyes blinked in sequence. We are the guardians. We keep the balance. But the harvesters, they destroy everything to fuel their ships. My people, scattered, hidden. I am the last in this sector. Zara looked at her walls of research data, years of studying the crystal formations and their strange properties. All this time, they'd been looking at pieces of a much larger puzzle. Well, you're not alone anymore, Thex. Whatever these harvesters are, they'll have to deal with both of us now. As if in response to her words, the base's perimeter alarms began to wail. The harvesters had landed, and they were spreading out across the valley. Zara checked her weapon systems and emergency protocols. She might be the last human on Helios 7, but she was also the only thing standing between an injured child and whatever horrors these harvesters represented. Rest, she told Thex, dimming the medical bay's lights to match the child's natural bioluminescence. You'll need your strength. Tomorrow, you're going to teach me everything you know about this world, because if we're going to stop them, we'll need to understand what we're really protecting. Outside, the crystal formations pulsed with increasing intensity, as if the planet itself was awakening to the threat. Zora Kestrel, the lone human ranger, stood watch over her unexpected charge, knowing that the real challenges were just beginning. The mysteries of Helios 7 were about to unravel in ways she never could have imagined, and the fate of more than just one alien child now rested in her hands. Bonds forged in starlight. Dawn broke over Helios 7 in shades of crimson and violet, the crystalline landscape fracturing the light into countless rainbow patterns. Zara Kestrel stood at her base's observation window, watching the harvester ships through high-powered binoculars. They hadn't moved since landing, but their presence felt like a weight pressing down on the valley. Behind her, Thex sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by floating orbs of bioluminescence. The alien child had recovered remarkably fast, the wound already sealed into a silvery scar. The floating lights, Zora had learned, were more than just beautiful. They were a form of communication. "Show me again," Zora said, turning from the window. "Help me understand what we're facing." Thex's three eyes pulsed in sequence, and the orbs of light rearranged themselves into a three-dimensional map of the valley. Tiny points of light marked what Thex called nodes, crucial points in the crystal network that maintained the planet's delicate ecological balance. "The harvesters seek the heart crystals," Thex explained, the translator now perfectly attuned to the musical language. "They power their world ships with them, but removing them." The child's lights flickered with distress. "It kills the planet, destroys the balance we've maintained for millennia." Zara knelt beside the display, her scientist's mind racing. That's why the research team found such unusual energy patterns. The crystals aren't just formations, they're part of a planetary-scale organic computer. She looked at Thex with newfound understanding. "And your people are its caretakers." A sudden tremor shook the base. The harvester ships were powering up, their living metal hulls shifting and realigning. Through the window, Zora watched as figures emerged, towering mechanical constructs that moved with unsettling grace, their bodies seamlessly blending organic and artificial components. "They're starting their survey," Thex whispered, the lights around them dimming. "Looking for the strongest nodes. We must stop them before they find the nexus point." Zara checked her weapons and equipment. The pulse rifle wouldn't do much against those mechanical monstrosities, but she had other advantages. 6 months of studying the crystal formations had taught her their patterns, their rhythms. If Thex could help her understand more, maybe they could use the planet itself as a weapon. "Tell me about the nexus point," she said, pulling up her research data. "My team mapped unusual energy convergences throughout the valley, but there was one location we could never get close to. The instruments always failed." Thex's lights formed new patterns, overlaying Zora's digital maps. "The nexus is everything. The heart of our connection to this world. If they find it." The child's voice trailed off, but the meaning was clear. They couldn't let that happen. A warning alarm blared through the base. One of the mechanical harvesters had broken away from the main group, heading toward their location. Zara quickly shut down non-essential systems, hoping to mask their energy signature, but she knew it was only a matter of time. "Thex," she said urgently, "I need you to teach me how to connect with the crystals. Your people must have some way of interfacing with them directly." The alien child hesitated. "It's dangerous for your kind. The resonance could overwhelm your neural pathways. None of the humans we observed could handle the connection." "You've been watching us. For how long?" "Since your first ships arrived. We had to understand your intentions." Thex's lights swirled apologetically. "Most humans left when they couldn't access our deeper mysteries. But you stayed. You feel different." The harvester was getting closer. Through the base's cameras, Zora could see its massive form advancing through the crystal forest, each step sending shivers through the ground. It was at least 15 feet tall, its surface constantly shifting like liquid metal. "We're out of options," Zora said, removing her gloves. "Show me how." Thex approached, holding out both six-fingered hands. "The resonance might kill you." Zara took the child's hands, feeling an immediate tingling sensation where their skin met. "If we do nothing, the harvesters will kill everything on this planet. Sometimes the biggest risks bring the greatest rewards." The alien child's three eyes began to glow, and the air around them filled with dancing lights. Zara felt a pressure building in her mind as Thex initiated the connection. It was like nothing she had ever experienced, as if every cell in her body was suddenly aware of its connection to everything around it. Through their joined hands, Thex began to share knowledge that went beyond words or images. Zara saw the history of Helios 7, the intricate dance of energy that flowed through its crystal networks, the delicate balance her people had never fully understood. She saw how Thex's species had evolved alongside the crystals, becoming their guardians and caretakers. But more than that, she felt the threat the harvesters represented. They weren't just hunting resources, they were consuming entire worlds, breaking down the very fabric of reality to fuel their endless expansion. Helios 7 was just the latest target in a campaign that had already destroyed countless planets. As the knowledge poured into her mind, Zara fought to maintain her sense of self against the overwhelming flood of information. The base trembled as the harvester drew closer, its heavy footsteps now audible through the reinforced walls. "Focus," Thex's voice echoed in her mind. "Feel the rhythm of the crystals. They respond to intention, to harmony." Zara concentrated, pushing through the pain that threatened to split her skull. Gradually, she began to sense patterns in the crystal network, like music played on an instrument she was only beginning to understand. The harvester was nearly at their door, its energy signature a discordant note in the planet's symphony. Through their joined hands, Thex squeezed encouragingly. "Now you begin to see. Together, we might have a chance." Outside, the mechanical giant raised its arm, preparing to breach the base's defenses. But Zara Kestrel was no longer afraid. She had found something the research team had sought for years, a true connection to the mysteries of Helios 7. Whatever came next, she would face it with both human determination and alien wisdom on her side. Dance of light and shadow. The moment a harvester breached the base's outer wall, Zara felt it through her newfound connection to the crystal network. But instead of fear, she experienced a strange sense of clarity. Through her joined hands with Thex, she could perceive the mechanical giant as a void in the planet's natural energy field, a darkness that demanded to be filled. Now Thex whispered, both aloud and in Zora's mind, "Think of light, of harmony." Zara focused, drawing on months of research and her fresh understanding of the crystal network. The formations around the base began to pulse in sync with her heartbeat. The harvester paused its advance, its liquid metal surface rippling with what might have been confusion. Through the hole it had created, Zora could see the machine clearly. A towering figure of impossible geometries, its surface constantly shifting between states of matter. But now she saw something else. Patterns of weakness, points where its energy field fluctuated. "They're not as strong as they appear," she realized, speaking through gritted teeth as she maintained the connection. "They have to constantly adapt to each world they invade. They're not prepared for a unified defense." The crystal formations around the base suddenly flared with brilliant light, responding to their combined will. The harvester staggered back, its surface becoming erratic, unstable. For a moment, Zara glimpsed something beneath its metallic exterior, organic components, twisted and fused with machinery in ways that defied natural law. "What are they?" she gasped, the effort of maintaining the crystal connection making her head pound. Thex's lights dimmed with sadness. "They were like us once, guardians of their own world. But they chose a different path, merging with their technology, consuming their planet's life force until nothing remained. Now they wander, hungry, endless." The harvester recovered its balance and raised an arm. Its surface flowed like quicksilver, forming what could only be a weapon. But before it could fire, the ground beneath it erupted with crystalline spears, each one pulsing with the combined energy Zara and Thex were channeling. "We need to reach the nexus point," Thex urged. "The knowledge there, it could show us how to stop them permanently." Zara nodded, already formulating a plan. The base had underground maintenance tunnels, originally used to study the crystal formation's root systems. If they could reach them, they might have a chance to slip past the harvester's perimeter. The mechanical giant outside fired its weapon, not an energy blast as Zara had expected, but a stream of nanites that began consuming everything they touched. The crystal formations fought back, their natural energy burning away the microscopic invaders, but it was clear they couldn't hold out forever. "The tunnels," Zara gasped, breaking her physical connection with Thex, but maintaining a thread of crystal resonance. "We need to move now." They raced through the base's corridors, gathering essential supplies. Zara's head throbbed from the lingering effects of the crystal connection, but her mind was clearer than ever. She understood now why her research team had never fully grasped the planet's mysteries. They had been looking for answers in isolation, when everything on Helios 7 was connected. The maintenance tunnel entrance was hidden behind a panel of environmental monitoring equipment. As Zara pulled it open, the base shook with another impact. Through their fading connection to the crystal network, she sensed more harvesters converging on their location. "They know what we're trying to do," Thex said, lights swirling anxiously. "They'll try to reach the nexus point before us." The tunnels were a tight fit for Zara in her environmental suit, but Thex moved through them with fluid grace. The child's bioluminescence provided all the light they needed, casting shifting shadows on the crystalline walls. As they descended deeper into the planet's crust, Zara felt the crystal resonance growing stronger. "Your people," she asked as they navigated the twisting passages. "Why didn't they fight back when the harvesters first arrived?" Thex's lights flickered with complex emotions. "We are not warriors. Our role is to maintain balance, to nurture life. The concept of destruction, it goes against everything we are." But now, the child touched a crystal formation, sending ripples of light through the tunnel network. "Now we must adapt, or everything we protect will be lost." The distant rumbling suggested the harvesters had discovered the tunnel system, but they were too large to follow directly. They would have to find another way down, buying Zara and Thex precious time. The tunnel opened into a vast underground cavern that took Zora's breath away. Massive crystal formations created natural archways and bridges, all pulsing with internal light. At the center, a column of pure energy rose from floor to ceiling, its light so intense it was almost solid. "The nexus point," Thex breathed, three eyes wide with wonder. "The heart of our world's consciousness." But they weren't alone. In the shadows of the great crystals, figures moved. More of Thex's people, their bioluminescent patterns forming complex conversations Zora could barely begin to comprehend. They approached cautiously, studying the human with a mixture of curiosity and concern. One stepped forward, taller than the others, its light patterns more intricate. The translator in Zora's suit struggled to keep up with the rapid exchange between the Elder and Thex. Words like prophecy and convergence filtered through, along with phrases that made no sense. The joining of spirals, and the path between spaces. What's happening? Zora asked, feeling like she was missing something crucial. Thex turned to her, eyes glowing with an emotion she couldn't quite read. They say your arrival was foretold, that a being from beyond the crystal songs would come at the moment of greatest need, one who could bridge the gap between our ways of seeing. The Elder approached Zora, its light patterns shifting to something simpler, more direct. You stayed, it said through the translator, when others left. You learned to listen, to feel the planet's pulse. Now you must help us take the next step, one our kind has never dared to take before. Above them, the cavern ceiling trembled with the approach of the harvesters. Time was running out, and Zora sensed they were about to attempt something that would either save Helios 7 or destroy everything they were trying to protect. The price of evolution. The Nexus chamber shook with increasing violence as the harvesters bore down from above. Crystals chimed in harmonic warning, their frequencies becoming more urgent with each passing moment. Zora looked at the assembled guardians, their light patterns forming complex webs of communication around her. What's this next step? She asked, her voice steady despite the growing chaos. What exactly are we trying to do here? The Elder Guardian moved closer to the central energy column, its light patterns rippling with ancient knowledge. Our people have always been custodians, preserving the balance. But balance alone cannot stop the harvesters. We must evolve, learn to defend, something we have never done before. Thex tugged at Zora's sleeve, three eyes gleaming with intensity. The Nexus Point isn't just the heart of our world's consciousness. It's a repository of all our knowledge, all our potential. But accessing it fully requires something we lack, the capacity for decisive action. Understanding dawned on Zora. That's why you needed a human. We're creatures of action, for better or worse. The chamber's ceiling cracked, streams of crystalline dust raining down. Through her connection to the crystal network, Zora sensed the harvesters positioning themselves above the Nexus Point. They weren't just trying to stop whatever the Guardians planned. They'd wanted to consume the Nexus itself. We don't have much time, the Elder said, its light patterns becoming more focused. The merger must happen now. Zora frowned. Merger? Thex's patterns shifted to match the Elder's. A joining of minds and ways. Human determination with Guardian wisdom. It's never been attempted before, but the prophecy speaks of such a union. The ground shook again, more violently this time. Above them, the first signs of the harvesters' nanite weapons began to eat through the ceiling. The other Guardians formed a circle around the Nexus Point, their combined light creating a protective barrier. If we do this, Zora said, looking at each Guardian in turn, what happens to me? To who I am? The Elder's patterns became gentle, almost parental. You will remain yourself, but also become more. The human mind is remarkably adaptable. That's why you could connect with our crystal network when others could not. A massive section of the ceiling collapsed, and the first harvester dropped into the chamber. Its liquid metal form rippled with anticipation as it assessed the scene. Behind it, more of its kind began to descend. Zora made her decision. Tell me what to do. The Guardian's circle opened to admit her, and Thex took her hand. Together, they approached the central energy column. The light was almost blinding now, but Zora could see patterns in it, strands of data, memories, and possibilities all woven together. Open your mind, Thex instructed, squeezing her hand. Let go of boundaries. The harvesters advanced, their forms shifting into weapons of impossible geometry. The nanite streams they released were thicker now, more aggressive, eating through the crystal formations with frightening speed. Zora took a deep breath and stepped into the light. The universe exploded in her mind. She was everywhere and everything. Every crystal on Helios 7, every guardian that had ever lived, every moment of the planet's long history. She saw the harvester's true nature, understood their tragic fall from grace. They had been guardians once, on a distant world, before fear of death drove them to consume their planet's life force in a desperate bid for immortality. But more than that, she saw solutions, possibilities that neither human nor guardian could conceive alone. The crystal network wasn't just a planetary consciousness. It was a key to understanding the fundamental forces that shaped reality itself. Through her expanded awareness, Zara felt Thex's presence, a bright point of light in the infinite expanse of knowledge. The child's mind helped anchor her, kept her from losing herself in the overwhelming flow of information. The harvesters reached the circle of guardians. Their nanite weapons met the barrier of light, and for the first time, failed to penetrate. Something was changing in the chamber's atmosphere. The crystal formations began to pulse with new patterns, ones that neither side had seen before. Zara opened her eyes, though she now saw through more than just human vision. Her body glowed with internal light, patterns flowing across her skin like living tattoos. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that made the crystals sing. "You don't have to do this," she addressed the harvesters, her words translated simultaneously into their ancient language. "There's another way. Let me show you what you've forgotten." The nearest harvester paused, its liquid metal surface reflecting the new patterns of light. Deep within its corrupted form, something responded to the harmony Zora projected, a memory of what it had once been, before fear and hunger had transformed it. Through her connection to the Nexus, Zara reached out not with weapons or defenses, but with understanding. She showed the harvesters images of their own past, reminded them of the joy they had once found in nurturing life rather than consuming it. The crystal network amplified her message, carrying it to every harvester on the planet. The lead harvester's form began to change, its aggressive geometry softening. Beneath the layers of technology and corruption, ancient patterns of light began to emerge, patterns that matched those of the Guardians. But not all of its kind were ready to remember. Some of the harvesters recoiled from the light, their forms becoming more chaotic, more desperate. They launched themselves at the barrier, no longer seeking to consume but to destroy what they could not accept. Zara felt power building in the crystal network, responsive to her human instinct for protection and the Guardians' deep knowledge of planetary forces. The nexus point flared with blinding intensity, and for a moment, everything in the chamber froze. What happened next would reshape the future of both species, but the price of evolution was rarely small, and the path forward would demand sacrifices from everyone involved. Echoes of tomorrow. Time seemed to crystallize in the Nexus chamber as Zora channeled power through the planetary network. Her consciousness, expanded by the merger with Guardian knowledge, perceived multiple layers of reality simultaneously. She saw the harvesters not just as they were now, but as they had been and could be again. The hostile harvesters' attack collided with the barrier of light, creating a cascade of energy that threatened to tear the chamber apart. But Zara, with Thex's unwavering presence beside her, held firm. The crystal formations throughout the chamber began to change, growing and reshaping themselves in response to the combined will of human determination and Guardian wisdom. "You've forgotten who you are." Zara's voice resonated through the chamber, each word carrying harmonics that made the crystals sing. "Let me remind you." Through the crystal network, she projected images of the harvester's homeworld as it had once been, a place of stunning beauty where crystal gardens grew in spiraling patterns toward the stars. She showed them their own ancestors, proud guardians who had nurtured life instead of consuming it. The lead harvester, the one who had begun to remember, stepped forward. Its liquid metal surface continued to shift, revealing more of its original crystalline form. When it spoke, its voice carried echoes of ancient songs. "We were so afraid," it said, its words translating through the crystal harmonics. "Afraid of ending. Afraid of being forgotten. We thought immortality would save us. And instead, it trapped you," Thex added softly, the child's lights pulsing with compassion. More harvesters began to change, their aggressive forms softening as ancient memories awakened. But those who refused to remember attacked with increased fury, their nanite weapons evolving to counter the barrier's frequency. Zara felt the strain of maintaining the connection, her human consciousness threatening to fragment under the pressure of so much knowledge and power. But she also sensed something else, a possibility hidden in the very fabric of reality, waiting to be unleashed. The crystals, she gasped, the revelation almost overwhelming her. They're not just storing energy or information. They're storing potential itself. The Elder Guardian's patterns brightened with understanding. Yes, the ability to choose, to change, to become. Through their combined awareness, Zara and the Guardians began to reshape the crystal network itself, not as a weapon, but as a bridge, a means of offering the harvesters a choice they have forgotten they had. The chamber filled with light that moved like liquid starlight, each droplet containing fragments of possibility. The hostile harvesters found their nanite weapons transforming, crystallizing into patterns that resonated with their original nature. You don't have to consume to survive, Zara told them, her own form now barely distinguishable from the light that filled the chamber. You can learn to grow again, to nurture. The crystals hold enough potential for everyone, if we share it. The chamber became a crucible of transformation. Those harvesters who accepted the chance began to shed their corrupted forms, their bodies remembering patterns of light and harmony that had been buried beneath centuries of fear. Those who couldn't let go of their hunger tried to flee, but the crystal network had already spread throughout the planet. Everywhere they turned, they found mirrors of what they had once been. Thex squeezed Zora's hand, the child's presence helping her maintain her sense of self in the overwhelming flood of energy. It's working, Thex whispered. They're remembering. The process wasn't instantaneous or easy. Some harvesters fought the change until their forms literally crystallized, becoming new formations in the planet's network. Others underwent a more gradual transformation, their liquid metal surfaces slowly giving way to patterns of light that matched the Guardians. Through it all, Zara felt herself changing too. The merger with Guardian knowledge had altered her in ways she was only beginning to understand. She could never go back to being purely human, but perhaps that was the point. Evolution demanded growth, change, the courage to become something new. As the light began to fade, the chamber had been transformed. Where there had been battle lines between species, now there were bridges of crystalline light. The transformed harvesters stood among the Guardians, their ancient songs joining in harmony once again. The Elder Guardian approached Zora, its patterns showing deep respect. You have done what we could not. You showed us that protection sometimes requires change, that wisdom must be balanced with action. Zara looked at her hands, now traced with permanent patterns of light that pulsed in sync with the crystal network. What happens now? Thex's lights danced with excitement. Now we truly begin. The prophecy spoke not just of saving our world, but of awakening others. There are more worlds with crystal networks, more guardians who need to remember their purpose. The transformed lead harvester stepped forward, its new crystalline form beautiful in its complexity. And there are others like us, lost in darkness, consuming worlds because they've forgotten how to grow them. They need to be shown another way. Zara felt the truth of it through her connection to the network. Helios 7 was just the beginning. Throughout the galaxy, worlds waited to be awakened, crystal networks waited to be restored, and species waited to be reminded of their true nature. She looked at Thex, who had become so much more than just a child she had saved, ready for another adventure. Thex's 3 eyes sparkled with starlight. With you, always. Above them, through the chamber's broken ceiling, the twin moons of Helios 7 cast their light on a changed world. The crystal formations pulsed with new patterns, telling stories of endings and beginnings, of destruction and rebirth, of the endless dance between what is and what could be. Zara Kestrel, no longer just human but not quite guardian, stood at the nexus of it all. She had come to this world to protect its mysteries, but in doing so, she had become part of a much greater story, one that would echo across the stars, carried by light and crystal, remembered in songs of transformation and hope.